I'm an introvert and absolutely hate small talk, but I still negotiate multi-million-dollar deals on an almost daily basis. I'm David, the CEO of Filterbuy. We're an air filter company that makes $22 million a month. If you want people to not just listen to you, but respect you, watch this video to the end. Let me show you the exact moment I discovered what separates people who speak with authority from everyone else. It's not charisma, it's not confidence, and it's definitely not about where you went to school. I was 22 years old, walking into orientation at Goldman Sachs with 750 people, the largest analyst class they'd ever had. I'd finally made it, my dream job. But within the first break, I realized something was off. Everyone already knew each other. They'd gone to the same prep schools, the same Ivy League colleges. They were part of a world I didn't even know existed. And I was just a kid from Talladega, Alabama. Most people in that moment either fake it or fold. I did neither. Instead, that day, I decided to become undeniable. When you're the outsider, you can't win by playing the insider's game. In those early months, I didn't waste energy trying to fit in. I focused on solving the hardest problems, staying late, and showing up prepared when others didn't. If you ever find yourself in a room where you don't belong, here's how to change your narrative. First, admit you're the outsider. Second, get obsessed with results. You can't out-network someone who's connected, but you can out-execute them. Deliver something undeniable. Third, ask hard questions early. Most people stay quiet to avoid looking dumb, but smart questions show clarity, not weakness. Fourth, play the long game. Insiders rely on reputation. Outsiders build one, brick by brick, through consistent action. Fifth, let your work talk. Once your results become visible, everything changes. People stop judging where you came from and start noticing the value you bring to the table. Now, I'm going to show you the exact preparation framework that made me undeniable in those Goldman interviews. The role I applied for was typically reserved for people with PhDs, and I was a 22-year-old kid doing research projects that most people would have called geeky. Once I had the chance, I decided I was not going to waste it. I studied every public paper written by the people who would be interviewing me. I read the Wall Street Journal every single day for a month and followed everything happening in the global economy. I didn't just memorize facts. I worked to understand how these people thought about the world. There were 7 interviews in total, one after another, each with someone sharper and more experienced than the last. And I believe the reason I got that job is because at that point in time, no other undergrad could have walked in and had a more thoughtful, informed conversation about what was happening in the world economy than I did. I wasn't the smartest candidate on paper, but I was the most prepared, and that made all the difference. So when people ask, how do you go from consuming content to demonstrating mastery? It's simple. You build your own mental framework around what you learn. You stop chasing information and start organizing it. Here's the framework I used. First, go deeper than anyone else. Most people skim the surface. Second, build your own mental models. Create your own way of explaining the world, even if it's rough, because that's what sticks. Third, practice teaching what you know. If you can teach it clearly, you own it. Here's the secret that the top 1% understand about speaking with authority. You can't fake passion, but you can engineer obsession. At the end of the day, business and life is a game of outlasting and longevity. The longer you can stick with the problem, with a business, or with an idea, the more likely it is that you're ultimately going to be able to find a way to make it work. Here's the problem with most advice online. Everyone's trying to hand you the playbook. But the truth is, those videos can only ever show you what worked for them. There's no one-size-fits-all path to success. The value is in nicheness, in building something that's so specific to who you are, that you're good at, and how you think, that nobody else can copy it. I can already hear a lot of you saying, but David, I don't have a passion. The secret is passion isn't something you find. It's something you build through exposure, repetition, and feedback. Here's the process that I would use to unlock it. First, I would run small experiments. I'd try different things that interest you, but commit long enough to actually learn something. Second, I'd pay attention to curiosity. I'd ask myself, what do I naturally want to keep learning about even when I don't have to? Because that's usually the spark. Third, I'd track energy, not just success. What leaves you more energized after doing it? If you do it for free, that's the start of obsession. Obsession builds when knowledge compounds. When you go through that process enough times, something will click. Now, let me show you exactly how this 3-factor framework plays out in a real high-stakes situation. Lately, I've been pitching retailers to get our air filters on their shelves. When I walk in, they typically start with, "We're not making any changes to the air filter category this year. We're pretty happy with how things are going." So, I listen to their problems. They don't like their selection. They don't know if they have the right selection, or they're not 100% sure they're merchandised correctly. I've already walked through their stores beforehand. I see how they're merchandising things, and I see a better way. And I'm not just speaking from nowhere. I have credibility and data that I brought in to back up what I say. Once I hear their problems, I'm not trying to sell them. I'm just using what I know to give them an unfair advantage. When someone tells you no, the worst thing you can do is start arguing. You don't build authority by pushing back. You build it by listening. Most people in sales or business hear no and go defensive. But if you stay calm, curious, and genuinely interested, the other side starts to open up. When someone says no, resist the urge to pitch harder. Think like a doctor. Don't recommend the solution until you understand the symptoms. Once you've earned the right to speak, bring in data, not opinions. Never say, "You're doing this wrong." Say, "Here's something you might not have noticed that can help you win." When they connect the dots themselves, they buy in emotionally. You're not selling them, they're convincing themselves. That's the essence of authority. Here's where most people blow their authority. They think you should have to know everything and never show weakness. When I say be undeniable, it doesn't mean fake it till you make it. You have to actually be undeniable. Because if you're going to try to fake it, it's going to come back and bite you. It makes you look like an asshole and it's not going to work out well for you. If you're in a situation where you don't know something, then that's when you want to really listen more because you want to be able to respond in a way that they're going to resonate with. Most people think authority means always having the answer. It doesn't. Real authority comes from how you handle the moments when you don't. Here's a non-negotiable rule for speaking with authority. Information asymmetry determines who wins. When I was early in my career, before I really understood leverage in negotiations, I once signed a supply contract that seemed like a win. The pricing looked competitive, and the rep assured me we were getting a bulk discount. 6 months later, I remember like it was yesterday, I was at a trade show and found out that one of our competitors, who was much smaller, was paying 20% less for the exact same product. I asked them how they did it. And in that moment, I realized it was because they had more information about things like freight cost, volume rebates, and supplier incentives than I did. That experience burned into me one rule. If the other side knows more than you, you're not negotiating, you're guessing. And guessing is expensive. When you realize you don't have all the information, slow down the conversation and shift from selling to mapping. Before any important conversation, whether it's a negotiation, a meeting, or a sales call, you need to gather 3 types of information. First, context intelligence. Before you talk to anyone, understand what's happening around them. What trends, competitors, or external pressures might shape how they think. Second, company intelligence, knowing their specific situation. What's their revenue trend? What products or regions are driving it? Have there been leadership changes, public statements, or recent challenges? Third is people intelligence, knowing who you're really talking to. When you walk into a room armed with those 3 layers, context, company, people, you're not guessing anymore. You're anticipating. You can see 2 moves ahead while everyone else is reacting. That's the real power of information asymmetry. Let's destroy the myth about charisma once and for all. Charisma isn't magic. It's not something you're born with, and it's not about being extroverted. It's a formula. I think everybody has times when they're charismatic and times when they're not. And what we read as charisma oftentimes comes from confidence, and confidence comes from authority and knowledge. It also comes from enthusiasm, and enthusiasm comes from that passion. You build charisma by going out and obsessing over a passion, turning that into experience until you're genuinely confident you're the best at it. I could never go in with charisma and sell something that I didn't believe in. I could never go and sell a Ponzi scheme with charisma. The people that do that, in my opinion, oftentimes are psychopaths. Charisma is just confidence with enthusiasm expressed in a way that fits you. So let's make this concrete. You now have the complete system for speaking like the top 1%, but knowledge without application is useless. First, pick one daily arena. Choose a consistent place to practice, whether that be making sales calls, editing and posting short-form videos, or LinkedIn posts. Somewhere that forces you to communicate with intent. Second, you need to set a numeric goal, like 5 sales calls a day or 1 post per weekday. Quantify the reps so there's no ambiguity about whether you're actually taking action. Third, measure what matters. If it's sales, track close rates or follow-ups. If it's content, track engagement. Numbers don't define your worth, but they do reveal patterns. Fourth, you need to do a weekly review. Look back at what felt natural and what didn't. Notice which topics or tones create the strongest response. Iterate intentionally. And last, stay consistent for 30 days. After a month of showing up and measuring, you'll see compound improvement. More confidence, smoother delivery, stronger reactions. That's how you transform knowledge into instinct. If you want to take your business to the next level, I want to learn more. In 2026, I'll be visiting and maybe even investing in some of my favorite boring businesses in the world. Send an email to the email on the screen now. Tell me a bit about your business, where you're located, and what you're hoping to do next. Hopefully, I'll see you soon. If you like this video, watch my video on why hard work is not the only key to success here.